Chapter 1331 Goodbye Qinling Arc. Jangi and the others left the Resistance Army's base camp. Luo Zhuo looked at the three people who had disappeared in the blink of an eye, took a deep breath, exhaled a plume of white smoke, which slowly dissipated into the air. Everyone pack your things, we're moving to Stronghold 17. Luo Zhuo was very grateful for Zhang Yi's help, and he had almost completely trusted Zhang Yi. But as a leader, he could not risk the lives of so many people in the organization. There were many other places like this backup camp where the cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. And these were all lessons learned through bloodshed. Those who disguised themselves as friends and came to find out where their main base was also started out with sincerity, delivering a lot of supplies. In the end, they led Intusi's private army. When faced with people from the Resistance Army, those private soldiers were like demons. They didn't even bother to capture prisoners, they just killed them all. No matter if it was an old man or a child, they all met the same end when they fell into their hands. As for the prisoners at the Dharma assembly, if they weren't going to be used for sacrifice, they wouldn't have been kept alive until that time to kill them. Bam and Dolma went down after receiving their orders, skillfully instructing people to pack their things and bring all the necessary supplies with them to leave. Luo Zhuo stood in the snow, letting the heavy snowflakes fall on his head and shoulders. He held out his right hand and caught a falling snowflake. The white in front of his eyes slowly turned into a madly burning scarlet. Luo Zhuo, remember, you are a child of the Great Snow Mountain. In the midst of the madly burning fire, a temple had collapsed, and the wood was falling over, making a cracking sound. Luo Zhuo stood in the courtyard, cradling an old monk in his arms who was covered in wounds and spitting blood. He reached out his rough, dry palm and stroked Luo Zhuo's face. Go and seize his divinity. Luo Zhuo, you are the true savior. The scene before his eyes returned to reality. Luo Zhuo closed his eyes and a look of grief appeared on his face. He clenched the snowflake in his hand and murmured, Teacher, I will do it, I will. Zhang Yi returned to the Paji family's home. Upon returning, he asked if anyone from the Paji family had noticed that he had been gone for a long time. After all, with Pa Jigsaw absent, no one else dared to disturb Zhang Yi and the others' rest. Very good, very good. Next, we have things to take care of. Zhang Yi called Yang Xinxin over and told her everything that had happened during his conversation with Luo Zhuo today. Since it had been recorded on video, it was easy for Yang Xinxin to understand. Xinxin, I have an idea in my mind. See if it's feasible, Zhang Yi said, crossing his arms. Brother, tell me what you have in mind, Yang Xinxin said with a smile. Zhang Yi told her his complete plan. Yang Xinxin added a few things after listening. The two planned for a long time. It was only after half an hour that Zhang Yi opened the doors. He then went to find Fatty Su, who was engrossed in playing games. Zhang Yi reached out and patted Fatty Su on the shoulder. Fatty, don't rush off to double-team the little man, come with me, we have some work to do. Fatty Su was startled, and when he looked back, he saw it was Zhang Yi, so he quickly put on a smile. Hey, boss, if there's anything you need me to do, just tell me. He was still wondering what there was that he could be of use for now that he was so weak. The southwest region is naturally colder than other places, and his Stormmaker is now a useless piece of equipment. Zhang Yi gave a faint smile and said, Come with me, back to Jiangnan. Huh? Fatty Su blinked, looking puzzled. Zhang Yi didn't waste any time on nonsense. He had only come to inform Fatty Su, not to seek his opinion. Zhang Yi immediately told the others to stay behind and wait, while he dragged Fatty Su along and opened the dimensional gate, teleporting them directly to the Jiangnan region. The distance from the southwest region to Jiangnan spanned almost the entire Huaxu Kingdom. After half an hour of traveling, Zhang Yi and the others finally arrived in Blizzard City. Isn't this Blizzard City? Fatty Su looked at the huge concrete jungle in front of him and asked Zhang Yi in puzzlement, Boss, what are we doing here? Fatty, now is the time for you to be useful, Zhang Yi said with a smile. Without waiting for Fatty Sue to say anything, he took the lead and arrived at Zhu Zheng's operations command center. Zhang Yi walked through the front doors. The guard at the door saw Zhang Yi and was about to say something, but when he saw who was coming, he immediately straightened up. "Welcome, Captain Chaos, to the operations command center." "Salute." The 2 rows of guards around them saluted in unison, their backs straight as bamboo. They looked at Zhang Yi and couldn't hold back the admiration and excitement in their eyes. "I want to see Commander Zhu Zheng," Zhang Yi said with a smile. He strode through the doors and walked straight towards the elevator. Although he could have gone directly to Zhu Zheng's office, he still wanted to give Zhu Zheng face. After all, you don't hit someone in the face. Behind the counter in the office lobby on the first floor, a woman in a black uniform with a bun hairstyle was leaning on her side, looking at the monitor in front of her and muttering something. When she saw the visitor, she immediately shouted, "Visitor registration." Zhang Yi's footsteps paused slightly, and he turned his head to take a look. He had never had to register here before, and could just go up to see Zhu Zheng directly. He wondered which fool dared to order him around. As a result of his glance, the corner of Zhang Yi's mouth lifted. "Isn't this Zhu Lark, Zhu Zheng's niece?" She was originally driven insane by pirates in the southeastern sea, and now she works as a receptionist, looking like she is mentally unstable. "Zhu Lark, long time no see," Zhang Yi said teasingly. When Zhu Lark looked at Zhang Yi's face, her face turned white at a speed visible to the naked eye. She covered her head, as if remembering everything that had happened at sea. "No, don't electrocute me, master. I know I was wrong, I'm not Miss Jiangnan, I'm just a lowly shepherd's dog." She screamed, hugging her head in pain and crouching on the ground, her whole body shaking violently. Soon, a stench came from her. The surrounding colleagues reflexively flinched away, looking at her with disgust. "She's not wearing diapers today? Maybe she's leaked." Ever since she returned from the southeastern sea, she had become unstable. It was not known whether it was because she had been electrocuted by Nerit too much that she could no longer control her bladder and bowels. And whenever she was stimulated in any way, she would go crazy. However, since her uncle was Zhu Zheng, the surrounding colleagues could only put up with the existence of this strange person. Zhang Yi looked at this young lady and felt a lot of emotion, but he would never feel sorry for Zhu Lark. She got what she deserved, and it was all her own fault. Fatty Sue looked at Zhang Yi and then at Zhu Lark. He looked at him, then at her, then at him, then at her again. He asked curiously, "Boss, did you two play any exciting games? Why is it that whenever she sees you, she shouts something like master or dog handler, and she even lost control of her bowels on the spot?" Zhang Yi's face turned black. "If you say another word, I'll make you eat it on the spot." Fatty Sue was so scared that his neck shrunk, and he quickly covered his mouth. Chapter 1332, Mentor Sue. Zhang Yi did not need to report, and he was the first to arrive at Zhu Zheng's office. As soon as he got out of the elevator, the corridor was already full of people, all staff from the command center, lined up on both sides, bowing politely to greet Zhang Yi and Fatty Sue. "Hello, Captain Chaos, and hello, Marshal Tianpeng." They were all beaming, and there were more female staff members, so it looked a little strange. Fatty Sue whispered, "Goodness, if you didn't know any better, you'd think you'd arrived at the Golden Romance Club." Lan Xinqing trotted up to Zhang Yi. "Oh, hello, Captain, and Marshal Tianpeng. You two are rare guests. I didn't know you were coming, so what can I do for you?" This once aloof and arrogant upper-class figure from the Jiangnan region was now groveling before Zhang Yi, trying his best to ingratiate himself. It turned out that he wasn't unable to smile, he just hadn't met the right person to make him smile. Zhang Yi said, "I'm here to see Commander Zhu about something." "Commander Zhu already knows you're here, he's waiting for you in his office." Lan Xinqing politely showed the way and led Zhang Yi to Zhu Zheng's office. As soon as the doors opened, Zhu Zheng immediately got up from the sofa and came over to shake Zhang Yi's hand. My dear Captain, it's been a while since you were last in Blizzard City. What, do you need supplies? Just let me know, haha. Xu Jing was beaming with pride. Since Jangi had given him 7% of the yuan or share, the energy shortage in Blizzard City had been well resolved. Even from this point on, Blizzard City allowed young couples to have healthy children. They had solved the basic survival issues for the millions of people in Blizzard City, and the next step was to thrive and multiply and allow civilization to continue. Zhang Yi laughed and said, I don't have any special needs when I come, except that there is something I need your help with. Xu Jing asked curiously, you can't solve it yourself, and you want me to help? Zhang Yi gave a faint smile and said to him, I want you to immediately gather together the best software hardening engineers from all over Blizzard City. My brother can be of use. He patted the fat man next to him, Su. He almost said it was him who was going to be of use, but he was a man who valued his face, so it was more appropriate to use Fatty Su as a scapegoat. Xu Jing looked at Zhang Yi suspiciously, then at the innocent Fatty Su, who was taking the blame, and laughed. I thought it was a big deal. This is easy. He immediately called Lan Xinqing and told him to notify all service providers in Blizzard City to gather together the best group of technical professionals in Blizzard City. He also didn't ask Zhang Yi what he planned to do. However, he understood that Zhang Yi wasn't acting on a sudden whim and didn't want to come over for fun. Zhang Yi would not do something like this through him without it being important. At this moment, Fatty Su was still in a state of disbelief. He couldn't believe that Zhang Yi had actually told him to go to Blizzard City to find a young lady, sister. After Lan Xinqing made a phone call, soon after, the person in charge of all the high-end establishments in Blizzard City received the news and immediately sent someone to Zhang Yi's villa in Blizzard City. Zhang Yi did not delay at all and hurried there with Fatty Su. Boss, can I ask, what do you want from me this time? Fatty Su asked in a low voice. Zhang Yi glanced at him and said, use your expertise. When the time comes, pick out the woman you think is the most flirtatious, charming, and able to arouse the hearts of young men. He emphasized again, remember, I'm not asking about your preferences. After all, what you like may not be what others like. I mean, women that normal young men can't control. Fatty Su immediately jumped up in anger, boss, you have to be honest with me. Yang and I are innocent. Zhang Yi, heh. Regardless of how angry Fatty Su was, pulling his hair and stomping his feet, Zhang Yi took Fatty Su to the villa he was given in Blizzard City. Lan Xinqing is very efficient. His power to get things done in Blizzard City is such that it is not an exaggeration to say that he is second to none and above everyone else. Before long, one car after another quickly pulled up to the villa's front doors. Lan Xinqing walked into the villa and respectfully asked, Your Excellency Chaos, the people have already arrived, and the rest are on their way. Do you want them to come in and have a look? Or do you want to keep them all here? Zhang Yi took a sip of tea and said indifferently, First, call the girls over here and have a look. Fatty Su's expression was very serious at this time. He quietly took out a pair of black-framed glasses from his clothes and put them on, and he didn't even know where to find a pen and notebook. What are you doing? Zhang Yi asked. Fatty Su carefully raised his glasses, Of course I'm scoring them. Boss, I must do a good job of the task you've arranged. After all, there were only a handful of occasions where he could make a difference. Soon, Lan Xinqing opened the doors and shouted, The beauty's parlor, come in. Line up properly, don't push. Lord Chaos will see you one by one. If you cut in line again, I'll suspend your license. When the major organizations in the city heard that Zhang Yi was here to pick people, they immediately excitedly brought over all the pretty girls. You have to understand that if anyone could get Zhang Yi's favor, it would be like getting a step up in the world. Even the organizations behind them would be blessed and have an extraordinary status in Blizzard City in the future. Soon, a group of beautiful women walked into the living room of the villa. It was -50 to 60 degrees outside, but they were wearing thin clothes and their lips were turning blue from the cold. It was imaginable how hard they were trying. Fortunately, the indoor temperature was high, otherwise they would have frozen to death or become paralyzed if they had insisted for another minute. Jangi had not come into contact with them before, and just by looking at them, he could not tell much. He needed more than just a pretty face and a good figure. He needed a woman who knew how to arouse and capture a man's heart. At times like these, he had to rely on Fatty Sue. He had basically ordered all the well-known female mechanics in Blizzard City. Fatty Sue looked serious. Jenny is no good, she's aloof and cold, and more popular with older men. Lily is okay, but she's had plastic surgery, and if you look closely you can see that her features don't quite match. Lian's breasts are too small, and her skin is a bit dark. Soon, he had finished writing down his scores in his notebook, and with a wave of his hand, he told Lan Xinchen, "Get a new batch." The girls in this batch were full of regret, but they obediently left through the nearby doors. Lan Xinchen immediately arranged for a new group of people to come over. Fatty Sue stared earnestly at the girls' faces, breasts, and thighs. Unusually, there was no lecherous desire in his face, and he began to comment seriously, as if he were a judge in an international supermodel competition. After he had finished looking at all the girls, Fatty Sue circled the highest scoring ones from several pages of notes, and asked Lan Xinchen to call them over. "Just now was the preliminary round, now it's the official competition," Fatty Sue said with a serious face. Lan Xinchen, who had just taken over the notebook, felt a little embarrassed and thought to himself, "You're quite professional in this regard." Chapter 1333, Wang Gong Stays. After 2 rounds of selection, a few famous Western women entered the final round. Jangi looked at the women in front of him and had to say that Fatty Sue had a good eye for picking people. They are all very nice in terms of appearance and figure, and basically all have had work done, so there are almost no flaws in their bodies. The most crucial thing is their eyes and expressions, which are full of temptation in every wrinkle and fold. It's not the kind of cliché seduction, but rather a rejection that invites. If you didn't know their identities and saw them on the street, you would think they were young ladies from famous doors or young mistresses of wealthy families. Fatty Sue smiled flattery at Jangi. "Boss, I think these are all good, what do you think?" "Ahem." Jangi coughed, then said to the women in front of him, "Let's start with the names." The girls beamed, and started introducing themselves from left to right. "Hello sir, I'm Taoran. I'm in Kaching. I'm Su Xiao Xiao. I'm Lu Ru. And I'm Wang Gang." When it came to the last woman, the name became a bit strange. Jangi and Fatty Sue were both taken aback. What's your name?" "It's the one just now." The woman named Wang Gang gave a shy smile that was charming and moving. "My name is Wang Gang." Jangi let out a gasp. This woman looked gentle and kind, and there was no doubt about her appearance or figure, but the name was really strange. Lu Ru quickly said, "Chaos, this is my cousin. He just returned from furthering his studies in the south a few years ago." Jangi unconsciously clapped his hands together. "Great, great. This name is sure to get people's attention, it really is extraordinary." As he spoke, he glanced at Fatty Sue with strange eyes. "This is also your dish, oh?" Cold sweat beaded Fatty Sue's forehead. There were a lot of people there, and I can't remember their names very well. Jangi rolled his eyes and then said to them, "Wang Gong stays, the others go." The women gave Wang Gong a jealous look before obediently leaving the villa. Wang Gong, on the other hand, picked up her skirt with a flirtatious look on her face and walked towards Zhang Yi. "Sit down." Zhang Yi pointed to the sofa on the other side and said, "I have something very important to assign you to do this time." "A mission?" Wang Gong looked curious. "What's this new game? Or do you like role-playing, sir?" Cough cough, this is serious. But you can't be called Wang Gong anymore. Your sister's name is Lu Ru, so from now on, your name will be Lu Ruyan. Sangha Temple, Vajra Hall. the Tusi of the Western family gathered around a long table, which was full of all kinds of delicacies. Among them, there was naturally the lamb in the middle of the table. It had already grown dark, and they were going to be deliberating until nightfall. At this time, the great Tusi of the West were all enjoying the food. La Min Oju was relatively gentle and knew how to eat with a sword and fork. But Pa Jigsaw didn't care about his image. With both hands, he tore the huge elbow and stuffed it into his mouth. He didn't care if he was covered in grease, and his face was shiny with oil. Chef Luodan was on hand to portion out the food for them, and he nodded with satisfaction when he saw how they were eating. As a chef, his greatest joy is to make food that people can enjoy. This incident that happened today is very unpleasant. Daiji, the head of the Yashi Langtai family, who was sitting at the head of the table, spoke while eating, glaring at the three Tusis below. Those damned rebels actually attacked the Dharma assembly. This is an unforgivable sin. If it weren't for the fact that we're about to go to the Great Snow Mountain and open the doors to the Demon Kingdom, I would definitely kill them all. Pa Jigsaw said without looking up, "You're right. To maintain stability and peace in the entire southwest region, we still have to rely on your Sangha temple." Pa Ji family chief. Daiji glared at Pa Jigsaw and his voice was full of rebuke. If you had let your men act at the time, you could have definitely stopped the rebels from escaping. How can you say such things now? Pa Jigsaw did not show any weakness as he raised his eyes, his sharp eyes just as fierce as a tiger's. Is Chief Monk trying to put the blame on us? The atmosphere was a little tense, but Shiaja Gyatso and La Min Oju continued to eat as usual. They had seen this kind of scene many times before. The two families were the underdogs among the Western families, so they could only watch the two front-running families fight. Most of the time, they are like weathervane, siding with whoever is stronger. Daiji said with a faraway look in his eyes, "This matter will pass. The escape of a rebel will not shake the rule of Sangha Temple and the Western Grand Tusi. However, I hope you understand that what happens next will determine the survival of the entire snowy plateau. No matter what our entanglements with each other are, we must not trip each other up during the operation in the Great Snow Mountain." Pa Jigsaw stopped chewing and La Min Oju and Shiaja Gyatso also looked at Daiji. Daiji leaned back in his chair, took a white silk handkerchief from the side to wipe the grease from his hands, and then said quietly as he turned the prayer beads in his hands, "More than 2,000 years have passed since the great King Geezer suppressed the demon people. The day of the demon's arrival, as predicted in King Geezer's biography, will come soon. By then, even the seal left behind by King Geezer will be unable to stop the true evil under the demon abyss, and our Western family will also come to an end." Daiji's words were spoken slowly, but the atmosphere was incredibly heavy. La Min Oju suddenly said, "Is it really true that the legends left behind more than 2,000 years ago are true?" She expressed doubt. Having received a Western education since childhood, she actually disregarded these so-called ancient legends. However, after the end of the world, having witnessed the various miracles of the snowy plateau, she too had begun to doubt. Could it be that the ancients really had foreseen everything that would happen today, more than 2,000 years ago? Daiji then said, "But this is also an opportunity. We know about things outside. The Qinling Mountain Cave in the Xinjiang region, the Misty Valley Abyss in the ocean, and the mysterious regions that are constantly emerging outside. Those places are incredibly dangerous, but they also hold great treasures. If we can obtain those, we will not only be able to preserve the family's millennial foundation, but we will also become even stronger." He spread his arms and said with great resolve, "By that time, no one will be able to shake our position in the snowy plateau. The southwest region will become a country within a country, and it will be ruled by our Shida family forever." These words were spoken with great confidence, but the three people below all sneered in their hearts. "That's all very well, but I'm afraid that by that time, when the benefits are in their hands, the Yashi Langtai family won't share them with the other families at all. They might even annex the other three families after they become powerful." Everyone is a human expert, and no one can be fooled by this kind of empty talk. Chapter 1334, Go do something for me. The four Tussi families gathered, and immediately began to talk about the upcoming operation at the Great Snow Mountain in a few days. Deji said, the mission to the Demon Kingdom is arduous. Each of our families must send a team of powerful mutants to follow the Undertaker and go to war. But at that time, we must also guard against the rebels causing trouble. Deji glanced at Pa Jigsaw and said lightly, I will follow the Undertaker into the Demon Kingdom. Someone will need to be in charge of overall planning and guarding the fortifications. Which of you family heads would be willing to take charge? The three Tussis were secretly surprised when they heard this. Was Deji planning to go all in? If they went, the main forces of the Sangha Temple and Yashi Langtai family would be gone, and they would become completely empty shells. But everyone also knew that as long as the Undertaker was there, they would get everything back that they had lost. And as long as they got the legendary treasure of the Demon Kingdom, the Yashi Langtai family would only become even stronger. Xiaja Gyatso opened his mouth and said, for safety's sake, I must personally lead the team on this mission. La Min Oju pursed his lips, yes, that's what I was thinking too. Since they were going underground with the Undertaker, they would definitely be safer. If they discovered the Demon Kingdom's treasure and let someone else get it, their position as Tussi would be in jeopardy. Pa Jigsaw took a sip of his broth, smacked his lips, and said, it seems that no one wants to stay behind to deal with the mess. It really was a mess. Not only would they be unable to go to the Demon Kingdom to control the situation, they would also lose out when it came time to divide the spoils. Paji family head, I think you are the most suitable candidate. Why don't you stay behind and take charge of defending against the resistance army? Deji smiled sinisterly as he looked at Pa Jigsaw. Xiaja Gyatso and La Min Oju also looked at him, expecting Pa Jigsaw to refuse. But unexpectedly, Pa Jigsaw sneered, let me stay. Aren't you afraid that I will demolish the lair of your Yashi Langtai family? Deji laughed coldly, you are a smart man, you wouldn't do such a thing. He picked up a glass of wine, lifted his sleeve to reveal a large gold watch. After finishing the drink in one go, he said indifferently, do what you are told, and you will see that it is beneficial to you in the future. What he meant was that if you don't listen, when we return from the Demon Kingdom in the future, we will have to carry out a major purge of the Paji family. Haha, okay, since you're so confident in me, then when the time comes, your family's private army will have to listen to me too. You will be assigned some men, but your authority to mobilize them is limited to defending against those rebels. Pa Jigsaw and Deji's smiles were both cold and sinister, their eyes locked, as if swords were clashing, and the air was full of the smell of gunpowder. Deji tore off a piece of meat, ate it while praising, Luodan's cooking is getting better and better. I feel like I can't live without the food you make now. He suddenly looked at Luodan, who was standing aside dividing the food, and said, how about you come to the Yashi Langtai family in the future and be my cook? Luodan politely nodded and said, I am the Paji family's cook, and I will only obey the family head's orders. Pa Jigsaw laughed heartily. Deji, are you already eager to extend a hand? He pointed at Luodan, but my precious chef never gives things away. Deji's eyes darkened, and he said meaningfully, but I've never failed to get what I want. Hey, the world is big, and many things are unpredictable. Deji, you're too impatient. Pa Jigsaw waved at Luodan to let him go first. Luodan bowed in salute, then left the Hall of Vidra with ease. As he lightly closed the massive doors behind him, a faint smile flickered on the corner of his mouth. Turning to walk outside, a long corridor led away from the hall. Paji Luodan. Suddenly, an icy voice called out to Luodan. Luodan looked up and saw a man wearing a dark red combat uniform leaning against the wall not far ahead, looking at him coldly. This man was tall and thin, with long arms and legs. He was wearing a curved sword from the snowy region at his waist. His thumb was already picking the teeth of the sword, and the cold light reflected from the roof lights gave off an unmistakable murderous intent. The man in front of him is Nalatu, the leader of the guard of the Yashilangtai family. This astute and capable man has dark circles under his eyes and some hidden fatigue. Luo Dan slowly walked up to him and nodded in greeting. As he passed by, Nalatu said with clenched teeth, "Remember, sooner or later, I will kill you with my own hands, one sword after another." Luo Dan looked at him nonchalantly, bowed to him, and then left the hall. As he walked along, he wondered how many people were secretly watching him. No one wanted to get close to this famous chef, and many even looked at him with an unquenchable hatred. But when Luo Dan was surrounded by such stares, the smile on his lips became even more exuberant. "Yes, that's right, nourish your hatred slowly. The look of hatred, as if they wanted to kill me and then eat me, is so delightful." That night, Pa Jigsaw and Daiji parted on bad terms. After returning home, he came looking for Jangi as soon as he could. The reason he was able to stand up to Daiji was because of Jangi. Otherwise, what would he have used to stand up to Daiji? At that moment, Jangi was also sitting in his room, waiting for Pa Jigsaw to return. Pa Jigsaw entered the room and saw a steaming cup of milk tea on the coffee table. The soft sofa seat was still sagging from when Jangi had sat there, waiting for him. "Lord Chaos, that brat from the Yashilangtai family is really too much." Pa Jigsaw immediately poured out his grievances to Jangi, saying how the other party had bullied him. Jangi listened in silence, and suddenly asked, "Do you want to get back at them?" Pa Jigsaw's expression changed. "Yes, of course I do, I dream of it," he said sincerely. Jangi waved at him, "Come here, I want you to do something for me." Pa Jigsaw's expression changed several times after listening to Jangi's plan. "Will this work?" He expressed his disbelief. That person has been refining the Dharma for more than 10 years and has long since lost all desire for worldly things. "Your approach." Jangi, however, gave a faint smile. "There is a saying called the idol filter. In your eyes, the Undertaker is a god, so he is perfect. But in my opinion, he is just an otaku who has not left his home for more than 10 years and knows nothing but chanting sutras." Otaku is how Jangi described the Undertaker, Jugo. Although it sounds strange, it is indeed very appropriate when you think about it. Everyone thinks that he has renounced the world, but only Jangi understands that Jugo is not as pure as everyone thinks. The way he looked at Jokir that day already said it all. Chapter 1335, A Beautiful View. The next day, a special guest arrived at one of Paji's family villas. A black car pulled up in front of the gates, and the reception staff were all extremely respectful, not daring to be the least bit negligent. As the valet opened the car door, an old monk with gray hair stepped out. The guards at the gates saw him and even took the initiative to kneel down, burying their heads deeply in the ground. Pa Jigsaw had already been waiting at the gates, and when he saw the person coming, he immediately came over with a smile on his face. "Wangwa Chief Monk, thank you for taking the time to come." Pa Jigsaw was especially attentive to the old monk in front of him. This was because his identity was extraordinary. He was the previous chief monk of Sangha Temple, Wangwa Sanji. In the beginning, Yashilangtai Daiji relied on his status as the Undertaker's clan chief and the power of the Yashilangtai family to force the chief monk to abdicate. However, on the snowy plateau, Wangwa Sanji still had a very high status. Because he had served as chief monk of Sangha Temple for more than 30 years, he was known to everyone. Moreover, he also had connections with the Pajis, because his predecessor as chief monk had been Pa Jigsaw's grandfather and his teacher. Pa Jigsaw invited Wangwa Sanji into the tea room at the back of the house and asked his servants to bring in the finest tea and pastries. Wangwa Sanji sat opposite him, looking at the attentive Pa Jigsaw, and said bluntly, "Gasang, if you have something to say, just say it. I can't stay here with you at a time like this." If it weren't for his master's face, Wangwa Sanji would not have been willing to see Pa Jigsaw at all. After all, everyone knew that his relationship with Daiji was not good, and it was likely to affect Wangbwa Sanji himself in the future. Pa Jigsaw laughed and said, "Wangbwa Chief Monk, I invited you here this time in the hope that you can do me a favor." Wangbwa Sanji looked up at him. "If it has anything to do with the Sangha Temple or the Yashi Langtai family, you'd better not say anything." His tone was unusually cold, clearly unwilling to stir up trouble. Pa Jigsaw narrowed his eyes, but still wore a flattering smile on his face. "Wangbwa Chief Monk, when Deji ousted you from power and stripped you of your position as Chief Monk, were you really willing to accept that?" Wangbwa Sanji's hand paused in its movements, and a flash of anger appeared in his eyes. "Gasang, why are you bringing this up?" He was an old man in his 70s, and could have served his term until the end of his natural life and then handed over the reins. But to be forced to abdicate at an age when he was about to be laid to rest was a sorrow he would rather not mention. Pa Jigsaw continued, "In fact, what can Deji do? He knows nothing about the Dharma, he's just a Dharma thief. He's only been able to seize power because his family produced the Undertaker. The chief monk of Sangha Temple letting him do it is an insult to the face of our Tantra over thousands of years." Pa Jigsaw's words made Wangbwa Sanji very happy. He said indifferently, "The matter is already settled. He has the support of the Undertaker. Who can do anything about it?" Although his tone was flat, it still revealed a trace of reluctance. Pa Jigsaw, however, said to him, "The reason he was able to become chief monk is because he is the head of the Undertaker's family. Without the support of the Undertaker, he is not to be feared." Wangbwa Sanji glanced at him and said coldly, "Get to the point." Pa Jigsaw laughed, "Wangbwa Chief Monk, in the beginning, the Undertaker and you often discussed the Dharma together, and the two of you were like teacher and student. Have you ever thought that if Deji can control the Undertaker, why can't you?" "Me? Ha, I don't have any powerful private soldiers at my disposal," Wangbwa Sanji sneered. Pa Jigsaw said, "But as long as you have the support of the Undertaker, you can withstand thousands of troops." "Why?" Wangbwa Sanji asked in return. Pa Jigsaw straightened up and patted his palm vigorously. Immediately, a woman came out from behind a screen in the room. She was charming and attractive, with a voluptuous figure, and a single glance from her eyes could make countless men lose their souls. "I hope you can help me pay my respects to the Undertaker." Pa Jigsaw pressed his thigh. "I remember that in the practice of Dharma, there is such a task called the beauty view. It is through observing the decay of a female corpse that one realizes the true meaning of a pink skull. The Undertaker was a person of great enlightenment. As his half-master, wouldn't it be reasonable for you to help him in his practice? Beauty is a matter of perspective." Pa Jigsaw's words were full of meaning and double entendre. Wangbwa Sanji looked up at the woman. He hadn't seen such a beautiful woman in many years. It wasn't her appearance, but the charm between her brows and eyes. A glance could make a person fall hopelessly in love with her. A woman like this could not be found in the snowy plateau these days, but she was born in the most nurturing place in the Jiangnan water town, the most top-level skinny horse. She knows nothing else, only one thing, how to capture a man's heart. Wangbwa Sanji lowered his eyes, and he couldn't help but think of a past event. When Undertaker Jugo first went into seclusion to practice, he was sealed in a small room, with only a small hole left open to deliver his food and sutras. It was in that less than 10 square meter chamber that he practiced diligently for 3 years. After 3 years, Wangbwa Sanji led a group of people and used a sledgehammer to smash the wall and invite him out. However, everyone thought that the Undertaker's practice was complete, so a celebration was held to celebrate. As a result, during the funeral ceremony, the Undertaker was staring blankly at a young mother breastfeeding her child. From that moment on, Wangbwa Sanji knew that the Undertaker's worldly roots had not been cut. He left his mother at the age of 8 and became a wandering monk for more than 10 years. On the surface, he was in his 20s, but in reality, his heart was as pure as a child's. The longing in his heart for his mother and the natural physical desires would not disappear with the daily recitation of Buddhist scriptures, they were just suppressed. But once they were released, what would happen? Wangbo Bosanji let out a long sigh, his heart was in turmoil. He could not bear the thought of destroying the practice of a lord of the corpse with his own hands, and even felt that such an act would be deeply sinful. But if he didn't do it, he would never be able to wash away the humiliation that Daiji had brought upon him. After pondering for a long time, Wangbo Sanji nodded to the woman. Since this bodhisattva has such a dedicated spirit, of course I want to make it work. Pajig Songgasang was overjoyed and immediately knelt down and kowtowed to Wangbo Sanji. Thank you, Wangpa Chief Monk. Wangbo Sanji said, this is only to help the Undertaker cultivate, not for my personal desires. Amitabha. That night, when Daiji once again gathered the major Tusi to hold a celebration for the Dharma assembly, Wangbo Sanji's cart drove through the side doors of the Sangha temple. No one noticed that among the group of lamas wrapped in their heavy Dharma clothing, there was a beautiful young woman.